Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and this is another one-man mailbag. We did so much rookie prep in the month of April that we didn't have a mailbag in April, and I'll tell you what, I went looking for questions, and that lack of a mailbag showed. So many emails. Appreciate all the responses I got on social media when I went looking for questions. I just wanted to, right at the start, say there's a couple of pretty decent questions I wanted to get to, but it makes it really difficult if they're 3, 4, 5 paragraphs long. So we do want as much information as possible when we're answering these questions, but if you could keep them just a little bit shorter, it really increases the chances of them getting read. We'll start with some very short questions because we've got some rookie running back questions from Twitter, and we will start with our good friend Trent McBride. Asks Achane or Henderson in Dynasty, talking about Devon Achane, Trevion Henderson. I think there could be some similarity between these players because they might both be really reliant on catches for production. And Henderson in some formats is ranked as high as my RB2. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But Achane, for the time being, still my RB4 in Dynasty. Only Bijan Robinson, Ashton Genty, and Jahmyr Gibbs rank ahead of him in my Dynasty running back rankings. I might prefer Henderson because he's a little bit younger if I was not contending this year. But if I'm not contending this year, I'd really probably be more likely to lean towards Cam Ward in a super flex league or one of the rookie wide receivers over the second tier running backs. So Henderson over Achane, or Achane over Henderson just in the Dynasty rankings. Henderson maybe for a team that's not competing this year. Jake says, name 3 of your favorite day 3 running backs that you are optimistic about long term. I feel like this would be a class where a few day 3 guys could put together solid NFL fantasy careers. I definitely agree with you, Jake. I think my 3 favorite are a little different than other people's, except Cam Skadaboo's at the top, and I think that's the case for everyone. I think Cam Skadaboo could be the best running back for the Giants this season. There were people who thought that he should have definitely been a day 2 pick, maybe even a top 5 running back in this class. There's reasons that he fell to day 3. He's not a perfect running back prospect, but definitely my favorite day 3 running back. Dylan Sampson and Devin Neal are my other 2. And these are both guys who I was hoping would go earlier in the NFL draft. These are guys that I thought I might be ranking early in round 2. Maybe one of them would even sneak it to the end of round 1. Because of the draft capital and the landing spots, you can't do that. Sampson landing in Cleveland, now battling another rookie, Quinton Judkins, who we think will win that battle. I actually think Neal's spot is sneaky good because I do believe he could be better than Kendre Miller, and Alvin Kamara at his age could go over the cliff at any moment. And Neal is a guy who sometimes you can find in round 3 of rookie drafts, but a lot of times we'll go at the end of round 2 or maybe early in round 4, which kind of leads us into Jose's question. Who's a good sleeper running back I can get after 3-round rookies, after round 3 in rookie drafts? And the options he gives me are Jarquez Hunter, Woody Marks, Trevor Etienne, Brashard Smith. This is almost an impossible question to answer because from what I've seen early on in both mock and real rookie drafts, I can't give you a real good answer as to who's still going to be there after round 3. Once you get past really the first probably 18 to 20 picks in this class, you're going to see a wide range of guys go off the board from the end of round 2 to the start of round 4. So what I like to do when we don't know for sure is kind of lean on our good friends over at Dynasty League Football and their ADP. My favorite 3 running backs in this class who currently have a Dynasty League Football rookie ADP outside of the top 36 are Trevor Etienne at pick 39, Ollie Gordon at pick 40, and hat tip to Jacob Gibbs, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at pick 46. Think really there's a pretty clear path for both Krosky-Merritt and Gordon to have some sort of impact this season. And if something happens to Achane, Gordon might actually be the best running back in Miami later this year. So very excited about those guys, particularly if you can get them in round 4. I will say I've seen Gordon go at the 2-3 turn. I've taken Gordon at the 2-3 turn. So they may not be there, but those are the three guys that currently have an ADP outside of the top 36 that I'm pretty excited about at the running back position. Nick has the 102 and a pretty bad team. Ramondre Stevenson and DeAndre Swift are his running backs. He's in a PPR Superflex league, and he wants to know if he should go with Henderson since he has Ramondre or Hampton. And I probably wouldn't let the fact that I have Ramondre Stevenson impact that pick all that much. I do like Henderson more than Hampton in full PPR leagues. I think Henderson has a chance to be top 5 in the NFL in 2025 in catches at the running back position. Josh McDaniels over the last 3 years, 22% of his offense's targets have gone to the running back position. Stevenson has been one of the least efficient pass catching running backs in the NFL basically since his second year. And we all remember the James White years, right? The Shane Vereen years. This offense, I expect, is going to have a heavy role for a pass catching back. I think Henderson's that guy. So I do prefer him to Hampton. I will say that we'll get back to the same thing about running backs on really bad teams. A lot of times you're looking at a 4, 5, maybe if you're lucky, 6-year window for running backs in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I've got a little bit of a problem on a really bad team that's not going to be competing this year using one of those years with the 102. So if I had a really bad team, I might be looking to move back. If I don't have quarterbacks yet, I might just go ahead and take Cam Ward, and I would consider Travis Hunter over both Hampton and Henderson. But if you've narrowed it down to those two in full PPR, my answer would be Trevion Henderson, my number 2 running back in this class in that format. Let's take a short break, then we'll jump into some of your Dynasty emails.
Critics are buzzing about the new season of Yellow Jackets.
This is not healthy.
Yellow Jackets' new season now streaming on the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan.
So we're already getting some questions from the chat. You guys know the drill. When we do the one-man mailbag, we finish the show with questions from the chat. I already see a bunch of good ones already in there. Go ahead and put those questions in the chat. We'll get some of the best ones starred. We will answer those in the last 5 to 10 minutes of the show. First, let's get to some emails. Some of these do get a little bit longer, but I thought they were really interesting. And a couple of Dynasty Cops questions as well. John is in a Dynasty Superflex League. Took Trevor Lawrence as his first pick back in 2021, so he is in a rebuild at this point. Took Brian Thomas last year in the rookie draft, has the 102 and the 106, and he's seriously considering taking Travis Hunter at the 102 to stack with Lawrence. Wants to know, how do you feel about heavily investing in one NFL offense in Dynasty, especially one like Jacksonville that might be exciting, or a full-on disaster? Is this a smart upside stack or just compounding risk and praying for a miracle? I think it is absolutely 100% an upside stack and compounding risk. I don't have super negative feelings about stacking players in Dynasty. The best format for that is obviously in best ball, because when you get a spike week from one of them, you often get a spike week from multiple of those guys. I don't have a problem with Hunter, especially if you're in a rebuild, taking him at the 102. I probably wouldn't personally let the fact that I already have Lawrence and Thomas impact that pick. But I think you just need to ask yourself, in terms of how you view playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, am I trying to play a little bit safer? Or am I shooting for upside and willing to take on risk to attain that upside? Because if that's the way you look at it, if you're like, I love the upside, I'm okay with the risk, then I think Hunter's probably the right pick here, especially if you were in rebuild mode, but it's not particularly safe. Jake and KC, I saw a couple of emails from you out there. I didn't want to read too many, so I'm just going to do the easy one. 10-team, 3 wide receiver, half PPR Dynasty League. He traded pick 9 for Mike Evans and pick 21. This is one of those times where if you look at the trade chart, it's going to tell you this: you definitely gave up the most valuable asset in the deal and you gave up more value in that one first-round pick than you got back. But if you are a true contender and Mike Evans puts you over the top, you're not going to care about that value. And in a vacuum, I'm probably grading this as like a D or a D plus. But if you're a true contender and not as worried about the pick, I can understand making the deal. And I've made some deals that are kind of similar to that. I've got a Dynasty Cops question from Rob. And this, I've got to be careful which words I read. It's another way that would make really easy to make sure your question gets read is if you don't put some words in there that could trip me up. This is a weird one. Last year, my friend asked me to join his startup Dynasty Superflex Salary League. I was happy to do it, my 8th league. On draft day, the chat was full of the usual fantasy trash talk until someone said that we need to cut it out. Unknown to me, one of the members asked the commish if his 12-year-old son can join and run a team. No one told the rest of us. Now, someone does playful trash talking or creates a clever, inappropriate team name, the dad chimes in and has the commish erase the comments and tell the owner to change their name. This year, he even changed my team name without telling me. I'm not going to tell everybody what your team name was, Rob. To make things worse, when we run out our rookie and free agent drafts, we have to pause it for half the day while the kid goes to school and early at night when it's his bedtime. Not to mention the potential for collusion because with the dad helps his son succeed. He said, actually, what dad won't help their son succeed? So there was some implied something I read into that. I really want to hear Heath's favorite line of kick him out of the league. Also, the dad keeps trying to high road us, but no, I probably shouldn't read that either. So how do you guys feel? I'm curious about your thoughts in the chat. You got a 12-year-old playing in a league with a bunch of guys who like to talk trash to each other and like to come up with funny names, and the dad is not having any of it. I don't know if I would go so far as to kick anyone out of the league. We might need to have a vote as to what type of league we're trying to have here. I think that there's really some significant concern if you're playing for significant money when a parent brings in a child that is too young for some of the things that are going on in the league, not because of that, but I think that just kind of shows their lack of agency and the type of undue control the dad might have on more than one team in this league. So I think there should definitely be a conversation with the league. There should have been one before the commish made this choice, but I understand you get a little bit concerned. I'm not quite ready to kick anybody out of the league yet, but I think there should be some sort of conversation amongst the league about what are we trying to accomplish here, and do we really like the fact that this dad's probably got more influence than he should on his son's team. Brock asked the question in a 1 QB Dynasty full PPR league, 10-man league. I have picks 107 and 110. Brock has Kittle at tight end, Chase Brown, Ken Walker, McCaffrey, Henry, Mix, and Kamara at running back. This sure sounds like a win-out team. Chase, Nico, Worthy, Waddle, Tyreek, Evans, and Cup at wide receiver. It's 10 teams, so that makes a little more sense. At 107 and 110, should I take 2 shots at running back with Johnson and Harvey because I'm old at the position? Or best player available, which might end up being Egbuka and Loveland? If I only take one running back, who should it be? I want to start off by saying I would not shy away from taking Colston Loveland, especially at 110, just because I had George Kittle. Kittle does now have basically a 2-year contract left. He is at the age where you should expect in the next 2 to 3 years, maybe as soon as this year, we're going to start seeing some decline. Loveland is already a top 5 tight end for me in Dynasty and could start out producing George Kittle as soon as 2026. So I wouldn't necessarily let the Kittle impact that. As for 107, like if it's not a tight end premium league, I'm probably not taking Loveland that early. I don't think you should be looking at Johnson, Harvey, or Egbuka. I've got a pretty clear top 7 in 1 QB leagues. It's Ashton Genty, Travis Hunter, Trevion Henderson, Omarion Hampton, Teteroa McMillan, Quinshon Judkins. That's just 6. And then I think at that point you can consider Johnson or Harvey. I would actually have Burden as the number 7. So Luther Burden would probably be my pick. If you definitely want to take a running back, I do currently have Johnson over Harvey, but I'd also consider a trade back. I think this is kind of the range of the draft, where if you look at my rankings and tiers, the difference between Golden, Igbuka, Burden at wide receiver, Johnson and Harvey at running back, and Loveland at tight end is very small. So I would be happy to move back into early round 2 if I could accumulate more assets, maybe accumulate another veteran starter, because it looks like this is definitely a win now team. We had some Dynasty Vet Questions from Appalachian Wordsmith. Where do you value Drake May with the additions of Henderson and Williams? And I didn't really give May a boost for the team drafting Kyle Williams because I am not certain that he's going to be a difference maker. I think they've got some decent pieces as number 2 and number 3 wide receivers. I'm not sure Williams is actually going to be a number 1. So I didn't give May a boost for that fact. He's currently my QB 13 in the Dynasty rankings, right behind Jordan Love, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, right ahead of CJ Stroud, Cam Ward, and then a pretty big drop off after that. I have Stroud close enough in the rankings that if you wanted to rank him as high really as QB 9, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think he's somewhere in that 9 to 15 range, but right now he's my QB 13. I'm hoping that he can run more next year and still be one of the most efficient running quarterbacks in the NFL like he was last year. Wes says, I'm finally poised to contend after a 3-year orphan rebuild. Would you trade Garrett Wilson and 102 for CD Lamb? And he already has, in addition to that 102, he has 103, 104, 110, 112, and 201. This is another one of those trades where if you look at the trade chart, Wilson and the 102 are considerably more valuable than Lamb, and even to the extent to where I would be okay to give up the best player in that deal if I was getting 102 and Wilson. But I do think Lamb's quite a bit better from a win now perspective this year. So if you wanted to make the deal, I think it's probably closer to a C- on the trade chart. But if you're a true contender, I could see how you could view that as a win. And I don't have a huge problem with it. I'd rather trade 103 or 104. I wonder who that person they want at 102 is. That might make an impact in my decision. Hog Fan writes in, I'm an RB2 away from being the best team in the league. Who are some veteran running backs that you're monitoring the price this season as we get to the trade deadline if you are contending? And I'll say this is a great place, I think, to do that because of what we saw last year with some aging running backs still performing very well. There are 5 backs in my rankings who I think could be RB1s in 2025 who are currently Dynasty RB2s. They are Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, James Conner. I would not want to buy any of those guys in May or June unless I'm getting a significant discount. Like I maybe if I had to give up 1 second-round pick for one of them, I'd be okay with that. I'd be willing to pay a little bit more when we get to September. And if you think that you can win a little bit early in the year, that the best thing to do might be monitor the teams that have those guys on them. And if one of them starts out 0-2, 0-3, 1-4, something like that, then it's time to pounce and say, hey, it looks like you're going into a rebuild or at least not competing this year. Can I give you some picks for your RB1 that might not be worth anything at all in 2026? So I think if you're in a place where you're a contender but feel like you need one running back, that's a pretty good place to be in going into the 2025 season. Andrew asks a question that I am currently dealing with. Another great way to get your question answered is relate to my teams. What do you do with Brandon Ayuk, especially for teams that aren't contenders? What are realistic expectations for his next 3 years? I'm pretty concerned we're not going to see Brandon Ayuk look like Brandon Ayuk until the second half of the 2025 season at the soonest, which makes it really difficult to trade him because he's reached the age where he's in his prime. He's not too old yet, but he's also not that appealing to rebuilding teams. And I have him on a rebuilding team. But also at this point in the offseason, you can't really trade him to a contender because they don't know if he's going to help them win this year. I think the best thing to do, my current plan with Brandon Ayuk, is hold. Hope maybe that he starts on the pup so you can stash him in an IR spot early in the year. And then I'm pretty ready to pull the trigger the first time he looks like Brandon Ayuk again, the first time he gives me production, to try to move him to a contender. My expectations for him the next 3 years are very, very low in 2025, probably somewhere between wide receiver 15 and wide receiver 25 the next 2 years. So I think if you trade for Ayuk, you are getting a 2-year window of wide receiver 2 production. Speaking of my teams, Billy asks, who are some of your most rostered players? And I usually do this later in the summer. Right now, I'm kind of in the middle of rookie drafts, so it's hard to put that list together completely. But I did take a look at the Dynasty rosters this morning just to see where we were at. And what I'll say is, first off, as a rule on my teams, the guys who I have on the most rosters are the guys who were 3rd-round picks for me in rookie drafts the last year or two that haven't hit yet. And I'm still trying to hold on to them through these rookie drafts to see maybe if year 2 or year 3 looks different. But they also might be on my most cut list when we get to September. A few of those names are guys like Malachi Corley or Luke Schoonmaker. Definitely one that makes me sad to even say, Tank Dell. Now, Dell looked like a genius for about 6 weeks, maybe 6 months. But now we might just have Tank Dell on our IR this year. So those are the types of guys that generally show up as my most rostered. There are a couple of exceptions to that rule. One of them, Justin Fields, I just think has been way too underpriced. There's certainly a lot of risk of him losing his job after the 2025 season. I don't really think he's going to lose it during the 2025 season. But there's so much upside, and pretty much anytime he's gotten the chance to be the starter, he's performed like a fantasy starter. So Fields is my most rostered dynasty quarterback right now, and that's really closely associated to how low his cost has fallen over the last 12 months. And oddly enough, my most rostered wide receiver that's not one of those round 3 guys is actually Garrett Wilson, who Fields will be throwing the ball to. This makes me a little bit nervous. Wilson is actually not someone who makes the list because I'm currently higher on him than everyone else. It's because I was a couple of years ago, and honestly, that hasn't looked great so far. Now I find myself in a place where I'm actually probably a little bit below consensus on Garrett Wilson as kind of a mid wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. And I may try to move off of one of those Wilson shares in the next weeks or months, just because I'm not sure I want to be that exposed. I still believe in the talent. I don't know that having Justin Fields as your quarterback is ever great for a wide receiver, despite what happened with DJ Moore, because so much of his production comes on the ground. So yeah, Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields, somehow I'm invested in the Jets. That doesn't feel great. Let's take our second break, and we'll get to a few questions from the sky, and then I'll answer your chat questions.
The most original musical ever is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I'm just giving the people what they want.
Better Man absolutely sizzles from start to finish. Better Man, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Looks like we have a handful of Dynasty questions from Blue Sky this morning. Looks like Hedgehog Action says, does it seem like the Dynasty community is writing Jonathan Brooks off too early? And Brooks was someone who was dangerously close to my must rostered list. I was very excited about him, really maybe undersold the injury too much, and now he's suffered another one. He's currently my RB 42. A guy we just talked about a couple minutes ago, Ollie Gordon, is in that range. Isaiah Pacheco is in that range. Brian Robinson is in that range. So I think I've written him off a little bit too. It's really hard to overcome multiple major injuries this early in your career. And Chuba Hubbard's going to be around for at least a couple of years. I'm fine with Brooks as a buy low for a team that's not contending, that you just plan on stashing on IR all year this year. I am not convinced you're going to get any more from him in the next 12 months than you're going to get from Tank Dell, which is very depressing, but it seems like the facts right now. Shill says, I'm mulling a Puka for London trade. Which side are you taking? This one was pretty easy for me. I have Puka as my wide receiver 5 in Dynasty. Drake London is my wide receiver 13. I would strongly prefer Puka Nacua, and it would probably take a late round first on the London side to get me to take the London side. I don't think you're getting that, so I'd probably just hold on to Puka. Charles asks, is there ever a scenario where you'd trade out of a draft completely? And the answer is yes. I've got at least one rookie mock coming up where I've already traded my first 3-round picks. What I would say about that, though, and I want to make sure I qualified it, it would rarely have anything to do with that particular draft class. I don't generally get so down on a group of rookies that I just don't want any of them. What will happen, though, is I'm a pretty big proponent of when you got a chance to win the league, go win the league. And that's exactly what happened in our YOLO Dynasty League last year. I ended up trading all of my first, second, and third round pick in the 2025 rookie draft to go win the league, and I won the league, and I don't have any regrets. So yes, Charles, I will trade completely out of a draft, but it's because I'm trying to push and win a championship in the year before you generally, and doesn't have much to do with a particular draft class. 2 more here from Blue Sky. Dave says, would you keep or sell DK Metcalf, and what is he worth? So I'm going to lean on Dynasty League football a little bit more here. I come in with the impression that I'm considerably lower on DK Metcalf than most. To be 27 at the start of this year in a semi-crowded situation only because George Pickens does a lot of the same things as him in Pittsburgh. And oh yeah, they still don't have a starting quarterback. He is my wide receiver 35 in Dynasty, just looking over at the fantasy football rankings over at DLF to kind of get an idea of where he is amongst consensus. My guess is it's going to be higher than where I've got him, and that means that I am looking to sell him. Metcalf currently comes in, well, you thought I'd find it a little sooner than that, didn't you? Wide receiver 27 in consensus Dynasty rankings. I would 100% be selling for that. I would be seeing if I could get a late first round pick for him, and I would happily take that. There are some rookie wide receivers that I value more than him. In fact, all the guys you might consider in round 1, I'd definitely rather have Travis Hunter. I'd definitely rather have Tetaroa McMillan. I would rather have Burden, Egbuka, and Matthew Golden over DK Metcalf. Although those last 3, that's probably not true if I'm competing for a title this season. So he's in that range of probably a wide receiver 3, maybe a little better than that if you're a true contender this year, although I'm not sure how much he's going to help you. Brado with our final question before we get to the chat. Is Breece Hall an RB1 still? So from my perspective in my Dynasty rankings, yes, he is. He'll still just be 24 at the start of the year. I hope he is because he's a starter on one of my best Dynasty teams. For redraft, I've got him closer to the RB2 range. He currently comes in as RB15, although there's some older backs that I think you might downgrade because of age and prefer Hall to them. I would definitely prefer Hall to them in Dynasty. I actually like him better than all the rookies except for Ashton Genty, although he's in the same tier as Trevion Henderson and Hampton and Quinshon Judkins. It's a big tier. So he's somewhere in that RB7 to 14 range. I would say for Dynasty purposes, yes, he is still an RB1. Let's get to the chat. And Miguel had said waivers run in 30 minutes. This was 26 minutes ago. Which order? Tesla, Fannin, Giddens, Hunter, James, and Marks. So I will go Fannin first. I will go Jarquez Hunter second. I will go James third, followed by Tesla, Marks, and Giddens. The ones that I feel really confident about were the quick answers. So Harold Fannin's significantly ahead of the rest of these guys in my rookie rankings. And then everybody else is kind of a mixed bag, and I think you're throwing darts. So I wouldn't put too big of an investment in those guys. we got a trade request. I traded 104 in my startup for 203 and 2 first-round picks in 26 and 27. That's I think that's a good. Sorry, I had to. The one-man mailbag, about 30 minutes in, usually wears down the voice. That's why they're usually about 30 minutes long. So I might have to take a couple extra drinks here at the end, but I think that's a good haul. I'd like it more if you're definitely not competing this year. But yeah, I think I like picking up those 2 firsts for 104. And as a bonus, you don't have to decide who to have to take with that pick. So we got a question from Lancelot. I just traded Garrett Wilson and my 12th, 112, so the 12th overall rookie pick for Penix. And he has a lot of good players there. And I'm assuming it's super flex. We'll scroll down. It definitely is. I would still rather have Garrett Wilson, I believe, than Michael Penix, but it's not a bad deal. I wouldn't be giving anything extra, though. Oh, Brandon, we got to talk about this. He says, Burden over Ibuka. I wish I'd heard that before I traded my pick a few days ago, or made my pick a few days ago. I have gone back and forth and back and forth. And how do you say that when it's more than 2 guys? I think Ibuka is a more sure thing to deliver top 30 for sure production over the next 3 years, probably top 25. I don't know how to piece together the fact that Burden fell out of round 1, but he landed with Ben Johnson. And there's just at least I don't think it's too small of a chance that we see Ben Johnson use Luther Burden in a high volume role, just maximizing his skills. So I think there's more upside with Burden, definitely more risk with Burden. I wouldn't feel bad about that pick as well. If I had 3 picks in that range, I'd take Ibuka at least once. It's definitely not. Oh, Mr. Popinski, favorite long shot for NFL MVP. Well, that's not a dynasty question, but I like the question a lot. And I will say amongst this group that I will go with Caleb at 28-1. Can we put too much faith in Ben Johnson? I don't think we have. We've got one more question from EM. I traded 104 and George Pickens for 111, 201, and Trey Benson. So you definitely gave up the most valuable asset in this deal in the 104. And I do think that I agree with you. I just want to look at these rankings. So in my rankings, and this is 111, we're looking at Colston Loveland. 201, we're looking probably at Jaden Higgins or Trey Harris or Tyler Warren. And so those guys in my rankings are going to be very close to George Pickens. In fact, I've got Pickens just a couple of spots ahead of them. So I don't love this trade. Let's try to finish on one that's a little bit more positive. I would probably grade that trade as somewhere around a D. Let's see if we have one more startup question, or we have a rookie question. Skywalker, great question, great one to finish on. I am doing a startup Dynasty Best Ball Super Flex League. When do you plan to go for a win now team or a young team? Before or during the draft? And I would say I'm, as a rule, very much against tying myself to anything before the draft, even a dynasty startup. I want to have a plan, but my first 3 or 4 picks are generally going to determine the path of my team. I think that's a good range because that's right about the point where some of those older players might become good values if you were contending. So not until pick 3 or 4. As you can tell, my voice has run out. This has been a one-man mailbag. On Friday, we'll have a more traditional show with a 1 QB startup mock draft. We will talk to you on Friday.